away from the start of the Tom Leykis Show. It's time for all departments and personnel to check in for today's broadcast. Music library?
Music library, ready.
Good. How about the sound effects people?
Sound effects, ready.
Okay, master clock people, timing, are you there?
6. Like timing and flow, ready.
Wonderful. Turntables?
Turntables, ready.
Great. Pre-recorded department.
Tape decks, ready.
And our splicing people.
Dubbing and editing, ready.
Perfect.
And ready. Dubbing and
enough.
ready.
Hold it already. Special effects, are you there?
Special effects, ready.
And thank you, special effects. Special voice effects.
Boxes ready.
Oh, that's wonderful. How about the sales department? Are you there?
Marketing and sales, ready.
Thank you. Okay, engineering department, are you there?
Engineering department, stand by.
Stand by. We're in the air in a minute.
Engineering, ready.
Thank you very much. P-Duke department, please. Thank you, John Paul George and Randy. Okay, prepare to fade down the musical background as we go to the 10-second countdown for the Tom Leykis Show. Thank you. We are 10 seconds away from the start of the Tom Leykis Show. All departments, all personnel, stand by. The Tom Leykis Show is about to go on the air. At 3 seconds, we will go to silence, and then we will cue the opening theme for the Tom Leykis Show. Stand by. Cue the theme.
From Los Angeles, it's the Tom Leykis Show.
Oh, God.
And now, he is Tom Leykis.
6 minutes after the hour, thank you for tuning into the Tom Leykis Show. This is where America gets together to talk about the issues you really care about. We're America's fastest growing radio talk program, a talk show that is not hosted by a right-wing wacko or a convicted felon. No. I am your host. Write down this toll-free telephone number. You're going to need it. It's 1-800-5800-TOM. 1-800-5800-866. Thank you so much for tuning into our program. And I might tell you before we get started with this hour that we are being simulcast on C-SPAN, which is a cable network that broadcasts a variety of political speeches, the House of Representatives. You have seen all kinds of events. They follow the presidential campaigns and what have you. And what they do is they stick a camera in the room with me or with whoever they're doing for the entire length of the broadcast. And I guess the idea is, and I've never spoken to the folks at C-SPAN about this, but I guess the idea is that somewhere along the way, someone is getting the idea that talk radio is the wave of the future. Somewhere along the line, someone is getting the idea that the voice of the people is spoken through talk radio. And somewhere along the way, someone is getting the idea that this is a very valuable part of democracy. And that is only part true. I will tell you why it is only part true. You know, there are an awful lot of people who think that talk radio speaks for America. That when you turn on a radio talk program, you are hearing exactly how America feels. When I'm interviewed by newspapers, when people ask me what I do for a living, how I do it, what the phone callers are like, what the mail is like, what the mood of the people is, they're always getting this impression that somehow what's going on here is reflective of America. I want to correct some mistaken impressions on this program. Number one, this is not reflective of America any more than one of those dopey 900 polls they have on hard copy. You ever see those? Have you seen Elvis? Yes. Call 1-900. No, 1-900. And, of course, they say it's 50 cents a call, and these are not scientific. Talk radio is no different than that. The reason is, of course, with a 1-900 poll where people are paying to call in, first of all, anybody can call in. Second of all, anybody can call in repeatedly. Third of all, everybody can't afford 50 cents to call a radio talk show or to call a poll on television. So, right away, it's not scientific. What gives anybody the idea that talk radio is any more democratic than one of these dopey tabloid polls? May I say that talk radio is the fastest growing format in the radio industry. May I say that talk radio has gone from about 150 radio stations broadcasting a full-time talk format to almost, how many now? 1,200 today? Almost 1,200 radio stations broadcasting this format. It's growing by leaps and bounds. Also, may I tell you that according to radio industry sources, of all of the radio formats, and I'm talking about adult music stations, rock and roll, hip-hop, alternative, of all of the formats, this is the most profitable format on radio. It's a very expensive format to run, but it is the most expensive and the most profitable at the same time. If stations invest the money, hire the people, make the station sound good, and hang in with it for a few years, talk radio is extremely good business. Having gotten that out of the way, as the third largest radio format in America, what percentage of radio listenership goes to talk radio? Of all of the formats on the radio. Now, for all the publicity we get, and for all of the growth I just told you about, how much of a percentage would you think we get? 50%, right? 60%. 70%, right? You've heard about Rush Limbaugh, and you've heard about G. Gordon Liddy, and maybe you've heard about this program years ago. You heard about the Larry King Show. It's gotta be some huge percentage, right? Well, I'm here to tell you that as the third largest format and the fastest growing format in the radio industry, talk radio receives 15% of the listenership. You multiply the number of people listening by the number of minutes they listen in a given week, and it comes out to 15% of the total listenership. That means that with all of the stations on your radio dial right now, 85% of the listenership is going to those other formats. 85%, because there are so many formats. There's country. There's something called adult contemporary. That's your Whitney Houston, Phil Collins station, okay? The Mariah Carey station. There's top 40, not as much as there used to be. There's something called alternative, the station that'll play Pearl Jam or Stone Temple Pilots. There are Spanish language stations, religious stations. There's all kinds of stations. 15% of the listenership goes to talk radio. 85% doesn't. Now, I say this for a reason. Because when 85% of the listening is not done to talk radio stations, how representative are the callers who call talk shows? Talk radio is not reflective of America. Talk radio is an accurate reflection of the people who listen to it. A largely white, more than likely male, largely over 40 audience. That's who's listening. That's who's calling. That's who you are hearing from. It does not represent people of color. It does not represent liberals. It does not represent, I say it doesn't represent, well, women. You don't hear a lot of female voices at the microphone, and you don't hear a lot of female voices calling in. Now, how can anybody listen to that and say that it is somehow representative of America? It is not representative of America. What it is representative of a very vocal and politically active minority. One that you have to pay attention to, but certainly not the majority of people who live in America. Most of the people listening to me right now and watching on television have never even tried to call in on a radio talk program like this one. And what is frustrating to me is that people listening to talk radio and hearing the older, white, male voices who tend to call every single show are under the impression that America has become a right-wing, very conservative place. I aim to prove to you during this broadcast that America is not as conservative as people say it is. And I also aim to point out to you why the President of the United States is partly responsible for the perception that America is more conservative than it really is. When we continue, I'm going to tell you why that is. And when we continue, I'm going to tell you about some of my experiences with the White House. I know the White House is watching today, by the way. And I'm going to give you an idea of where I'm coming from on this. I'm going to tell you why liberals are on the run. And I'm telling you this as someone who is not an extreme liberal. I'm in the middle. And I think most Americans are in the middle. Unfortunately, the Newt Gingriches and the Rush Limbaughs of the world have redefined every word, every phrase. They've done a masterful job of it. And the Bill Clintons of the world have done a lousy job. And I will tell you why as we continue. 16 minutes after the hour from Los Angeles, my name is Tom Leykis.
Coast to Coast, the Tom Leykis Show.
Minutes after the hour, coast to coast, it's the Tom Leykis Show. Thanks for tuning in. Talking about where this country really is at and why people are somehow getting the idea that talk radio speaks for America, that talk radio somehow is representative of the masses. A medium that is largely devoid of women, people of color, liberals. How can it speak for America? It speaks for older, white, suburban, male America. And anyone who listens to this medium and says, I'm getting the whole picture, is a fool. May I say that? And that is my fear about all the focus on talk radio. Let me read to you some statistics from last week's Time magazine. They commissioned a survey. And this was a poll of 800 adult Americans taken by Yankelevich Partners back in the first week of December. And a bunch of questions were asked. And, of course, as you hear Newt Gingrich talking about the contract with America and how everybody wants the balanced budget amendment, the line item veto, welfare reform, et cetera, tax cuts for families, and the fact that Republicans got elected to office somehow means that we all signed on to this. May I read to you some of these statistics from this survey in Time magazine? Question. Is it fair to cut off government payments to people who've been on welfare for 2 years, even if they have no other source of income? Now, you would think by listening to Newt and to Rush Limbaugh that this would be just unbelievably fair as far as the American people are concerned. Well, guess what? 52% of the American people surveyed in this survey said it's unfair to cut off government payments to people who've been on welfare for 2 years, even if they have no other source of income. 52%. That is a majority, last I checked. 38% said it's fair. Here's another question. Should welfare reform start saving taxpayers money immediately? Or is it more important to train welfare recipients for jobs, which means the government would spend more money in the short run? Spend more money? Train people for jobs? Those lazy slobs. They should have gone to school, for God's sake. You hear the talk radio callers all the time. These lazy bums out there. Well, guess what? 69% of the people surveyed said that we should spend more on job training. It'll cost more in the short run, and in the long run, it's going to save America money. 69%. 24% said start saving now. Forget job training. It goes on from there. Here's another one. If money is saved by cutting government programs, we just heard the president, by the way, who ran for office promising a middle-class tax cut. And I know the White House is watching, so if the White House doesn't understand why people have a problem with Bill Clinton, and I voted for Bill Clinton, may I give you an example? Bill Clinton ran for office promising a middle-class tax cut, something I never believed we would get, something I never believed was recommended or feasible because we had a huge budget deficit. How can you cut people's taxes? But Bill Clinton promised it anyway when he ran for office. Then after he won, shortly before inauguration, I mean, he was not even in yet, he said, well, you know, the budget deficit is so severe, and I had no idea how severe it was, so, hey, I'm not going to give you a middle-class tax cut, sorry. All right, so now we move up a couple of years, and Republicans kick Democratic butt on Election Day, and all of a sudden the same Bill Clinton now finds it in his heart to revive the middle-class tax cut, something which I still think we can't afford to do. Now, am I some wild-eyed liberal? Am I so far out of the mainstream? Am I one of these commie-lib, pseudo-socialists as Newt Gingrich and Rush Limbaugh would portray people like me? Well, let me tell you what the American people do think. This country that's supposed to be as conservative and right-wing and, frankly, as nasty and unsympathetic as it would be portrayed in talk radio. 29% of the people answered this way, okay? Well, first of all, let me read the question. I forgot to read the question. If money is saved by cutting government programs, should the savings be used to cut middle-class taxes, to reduce the deficit, or to increase spending on other government programs like job training? 29% said cut taxes. 34% said reduce the deficit. 29% said it should be spent on government programs like job training. There you go. In that particular question, 63% of the American people did not want taxes cut. But somehow we've been led to believe that that's what the American people want. We want our taxes cut. Hey, we can't afford to cut taxes, and the American people are not stupid. But if you listen to talk radio, you'd think everybody who doesn't have a job is a lazy welfare cheat, lazy bum, Cadillac welfare mother, etc., etc. The real truth is many people who thought that they would never be looking for help are looking for help. Many people who thought they would never lose their jobs have lost their jobs, and now they are looking for work. Many people who thought their unions would protect them have not been protected, and they are out in the street now. And we have a president who purports to be a liberal, who purports to be a Democrat, who should be able to articulate all of this. And instead, he blows whichever way the wind blows. If it's more expedient to say you want to cut taxes, you say you're going to cut taxes. If it's more expedient to say we're going to provide health care to every single American, everybody, universal coverage, and hold up that health security card, he's going to do that. If it's okay to say, let's cut government spending, let's cut defense spending and have a peace dividend, first he cuts defense spending and gives us the peace dividend. Republicans kick Democratic butt on election day, then he says, I'm going to increase defense spending $25 billion. Where is this president? We have people who need a voice. Not for the left wing, not for the right wing, that big group of people in the middle who work hard. They work hard, they have kids, they have families, they do everything they can. Some of them work 2 jobs. Some of them never take vacations. And believe me, they don't break rules, they don't break laws, they don't ask for government handouts, they don't even like collecting unemployment. And some of these people, through no fault of their own, end up in the soup. And people like this need somebody to stand up for them. Bill Clinton can't do it. Bill Clinton won't do it. Bill Clinton hasn't done it. I voted for Bill Clinton. I am not a left-wing extremist. I believe in spending government money wisely. I am someone who is in a CETA program, and I heard Ronald Reagan talk about what a big, colossal waste of money this is, and I watched Reagan and Bush take a hatchet and cut the CETA program to ribbons. Guess what? I wouldn't be standing here today had I not been in a government-run CETA program. We don't have people who can articulate for people in the middle. People who believe in working hard, people who don't commit crimes, people who don't drive up in their Cadillac to the welfare office, people who work hard and through no fault of their own. Changing technologies, busted unions, people who thought they'd have jobs there all their lives. All they'd have to do is work hard. All they'd have to do is contribute to society, keep their noses clean, don't get arrested, don't get in trouble, and somehow at the end you'll be able to retire to a condominium in Florida or North Carolina or who knows where. And an awful lot of people have found out that this was just a sell job, that this lifestyle was never going to exist. And we have people in the middle class who have been soaked into believing that America has somehow suddenly become Grinch-like. And they listen to talk radio, and somehow this justifies their feelings. They listen to the racism and the bigotry and the stereotyping that pours out of the speakers day in and day out, all day long. And they somehow believe that it's okay to be a bigot, and it's okay to hate the poor, and it's okay to hate the homeless, because they hear other people on the radio doing it. I've got a lot more to say about this, and I will as we continue.
The Tom Leykis Show. Broadcasting from our nation's capital, Los Angeles, California. You're listening to the Tom Leykis Show.
Y'all ready for this?
26 minutes before the hour. Thank you for tuning into the Tom Leykis Show. This is where we talk about the issues you really care about. Coast to coast from Los Angeles. And toll free at 1-800-5800-TOM. We're a new radio program. We've been on the air since May. And we are being simulcast today on C-SPAN. You can see us just by doing some channel surfing. And please, I want to just say this. Do not call up and go,
hello, I'm in Topeka, Kansas, and I was wondering what channel C-SPAN is on my cable. I have Dimension cable.
You know what I'm saying? Don't do that. Because we don't know, okay? I mean, we're here in Los Angeles, and this is where we do the show. So we do not know about your cable company. Just what you do is, and I want to recommend this to the women out there who hate channel surfing. One thing men do, I think, have the edge on, is they know how to take that remote control. Like this one I have right next to me here, and they know just how to go zap, 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 zap until you will find C-SPAN. You might have to go through 40 or 50 channels, but you will find us. Anyway, I'm talking about Republicans and Democrats and some of the problems that the Democratic Party seems to be running into. Because the Democratic Party clearly is not doing a very good job of articulating the problems of people who work. And I must tell you that we have spent an awful lot of time trying to get the President of the United States on our program. May I say our show is broadcast on 110 stations across the country. May I say that we are heard in some of the biggest radio markets in America. Los Angeles, Chicago, San Francisco, Detroit on WXYT, Seattle on Cairo FM. We are heard all over America. And we have contacted the White House repeatedly. I have heard the president, and again, I know they're watching at the White House. That's the great thing about being on C-SPAN, because finally I get to say this to somebody who isn't listening to me over at the White House, okay? Let me just say this. We have tried to get President Clinton on this program. Do I agree with everything the president has said or done? No. I have taken the president to task on a variety of issues. Most importantly, I have taken him to task for collapsing like a house of cards on issues like gays in the military, on issues like the middle-class tax cut, which I wasn't in favor of to begin with, but it shouldn't have been promised, etc. But guess what? I'm one of the few radio talk show hosts who voted for Bill Clinton. I am one of the few radio talk show hosts who comes from a working family. And I will tell you about my family in a moment. I am one of the few people who would give him a fair shot on the air. And may I say, we have contacted the White House repeatedly. And how repeatedly? Well, let me show you how repeatedly we have contacted the White House. We have got a variety of faxes that we have sent to the White House. Our show went on the air nationally May 9th, 1994. Here is a fax dated May 13th, 1994. It was addressed to Richard Strauss and Mark Guerin at the White House. And the letter says, I just wanted to introduce myself and my new position as producer of the Tom Leykis Show. We're a brand new show, and we want to make ourselves known to the White House. Here's some information about the show, and it goes on to give some self-serving information about the program. That was 4 days after we went on the air. This was faxed. By the way, the White House says they never received this fax. It was sent to their private fax number. Here's another one dated June 16th. A letter from our producer, Eric Braverman, saying, I just wanted to update you on the Tom Leykis Show. We've been on the air since May 9th, and we're now at approximately 50 stations. We are considered one of the fastest-growing radio talk shows in America. Here is a fax dated July 6th, 1994, to Richard Strauss at President Clinton's radio press office. Richard, I know it's early, but I wanted to plant a seed regarding the elections coming up later this year. Please keep the Tom Leykis Show in mind when planning talk show appearances in relation to the election. Here is another one, sent on November 8th, 1994. This is to Richard Strauss. We are interested in interviewing President Clinton briefly on the Tom Leykis Show in the next couple of days. Subject of the show is going to center on the election results from around the country. It would be a very brief interview and to the point, and by the way, done by telephone. May I tell you that we have faxed the White House repeatedly. We have called the White House repeatedly. And we have gotten nowhere in regard to getting not just the president, but the vice president, Mrs. Clinton, or just about any other senior White House official on the program. Now, that's okay. Because may I say, it would be very self-serving for me to think that the president is going to take time out to spend time on my radio program. That's fine. But then we hear people at the White House burbling about how there is this relentless drumbeat of negativism in talk radio. How Rush Limbaugh has 3 unexpurgated hours every day to bash the president, and how the president never gets an opportunity to respond. That is a lie. The president has not only had an opportunity to respond on this program, but various radio talk programs around the country, and the White House has been arrogant, difficult, and frankly unresponsive. I said this on the air a couple of weeks ago, and we got a real fast phone call back from Richard Strauss at the White House, who runs the radio office there, who proceeded to tell us we'd only called him maybe twice since we went on the air in May, and who told us that he hadn't seen any of our faxes when we'd sent a lot of faxes to the White House. But again, it is not just this show, it is plenty of shows. The president has had numerous opportunities to come on the air. But I want to tell you something. Republicans know how to do it. I am speaking as someone who voted for the president. Republicans know how to do it. Newt Gingrich knows how to do it. Congressman Bob Dornan of California knows how to do it. Various Republicans know how to do it. They don't get on the phone with talk radio producers and say, "Hi, who are the other guests on the show? What are the questions going to be? Who is the host? What is his opinion about They don't do that. They come on the air like pit bulls, and if they are challenged by a host, they're going to come on and respond back. The Democrats we have dealt with, and we have tried repeatedly to deal with the Democratic Party, they don't want to come on without making all kinds of conditions, without putting all kinds of prerequisites on us, and we don't do the show that way. We don't, we won't, we haven't. And so what's the result? The result is, on our show, where the president might get the fairest interview, and there are other shows like this one, he won't come on. He won't come on. The vice president, we don't hear anything about him. We don't hear anything about Mrs. Clinton, nothing. So that's okay, because the president is a busy man, and I understand that he just can't respond to every interview request. But let me tell you this. Don't complain about the drumbeat of negativism on talk radio. The White House has been unresponsive to this program and other programs. Period.
George only has a couple of minutes.
That's all I wanted to say about that. Now, I'll tell you what, we have George Stephanopoulos calling in. All right, I'm going to talk with George Stephanopoulos. But when we are finished, I want to tell you, since the president, in my opinion, is unable to articulate the problems of the real working person, I am going to tell you about the problems of a real working person coming up. George Stephanopoulos joining us from, I assume, the White House. Thank you for calling in. We appreciate it. Do I have him on the right line?
Just took another call.
Tom, how are you?
All right, I'm doing just fine. George, how are you?
I'm doing great.
What can we do for you?
First of all, I just had to listen to your whine, so it wasn't that great. But
you had to listen to me whine?
First of all, I should say, if you never got your calls answered, that's a mistake, and it's stupid of us, because we have tried to do an awful lot of talk radio. In fact, the president had the first radio talk show briefing ever from the White House back here when we were introducing health care, and 160 radio talk show hosts were on. We've had 60 talk show hosts talk the day after the briefing, and we've tried to do an awful lot of talk radio, and I feel bad that we haven't gotten enough people on your show. That's a mistake, and that's pretty stupid. But I guess what bothers me more is your conviction, and I guess it's heartfelt conviction, that the president hasn't been in here every day standing up for the middle class, the people that you were talking about who work hard every single day. Because I think if you look at the president's record, and I'd be the first to admit that maybe we haven't done a good enough job at getting that record out, you see it's a pretty consistent record of standing up for middle-class people, whether it's looking first and foremost at the economic plan. The economy under this president has been the strongest economy in 30 years. It's created over 5.5 million jobs. He's cut government spending. He's helped turn the economy around by making the tough choices to bring down the deficit. And he's done an awful lot for working people, whether it's through expanding the student loan program, expanding other education programs, expanding the national service program, expanding the kind of job training that you're talking about, and you were exactly right, that the Republicans cut it for the 12 years before we got here, working hard to make sure we have Head Start and immunization programs for poor kids, and probably one of the biggest tax cuts for working people ever passed, which was the Earned Income Tax Credit, which provided a tax cut of $1,000 for 15 million families earning under $25,000 a year. I know what it was. So, you know, we feel pretty good about the start we've made at helping working people. We feel we have to do a lot more, and because the deficit's come down, because we've cut spending, we think it's okay now to make sure that the middle class gets some of the benefits of that reduced spending in a tax cut.
But wait a minute. The country still has a budget deficit, as I understand, hovering a little bit over $200 billion.
Actually, it's under $200 billion.
Under $200 billion?
It'll be under $200 billion, but under about $170.
$170 billion. How can we afford to give anything back? If we're going to cut spending, why not just cut spending? Why give the money back, especially when you look at that Time magazine survey that says that people are not even looking for tax cuts? The conservatives bullied you guys into a corner into believing we want our taxes cut, that we don't want our taxes cut. We want the budget deficit to go down, and the Clinton administration, at least for a while, seemed to be doing that. You can't tell me that this is what the American people want. How all of a sudden can you say, when you still have a $170 billion budget deficit, that now we can afford to give money back? We are still in the hole, George.
Well, there's no question there still is some debt, but the president's cut the deficit in half, number one. And the president believes that people ought to get some of the benefits when you cut government down. It's not enough just to throw it away.
You're not throwing it away. You're cutting down the budget deficit. You're not throwing it away, though.
And we are bringing down the budget deficit, but you can do both. And that's exactly what the president's done.
How do you do that, though?
Here's how you do it. You cut taxes, but you make sure you pay for it. And that's the biggest difference between what...
But you haven't paid for it because you're still in the hole, $170 billion.
Wait a second.
You haven't paid for it.
Every single dollar in this tax cut is paid for.
But isn't part of your job right now to be cutting the budget deficit?
And we are cutting the budget deficit, and the budget deficit is still coming down for 3 years in a row. I would point out, you know, the Republicans talk a lot about tax cuts, but taxes went up every single year, and the deficit went up every single year.
All well and good. And you know what? I think you make a good point when you say that the budget deficit has been coming down, unemployment has been coming down, the economy has been stronger. All true. If that's so, why not keep going in that direction, especially when you look at a survey like the one here in Time magazine that says the majority of Americans are not looking for a tax cut?
Because incomes still aren't going up. And a lot of those people you were talking about, who work 2 jobs, who don't get enough sleep, who can't take a vacation, can use a little bit of extra money to help care for their kids, to help pay for an education. Look at the ideas.
People who don't make money, wait a minute, people who can't make a living don't benefit from tax cuts. Let me tell you something, George.
But we're talking about working people.
I want to talk about a working person to you for a second. My father is 62 years old. He worked for 43 years for the New York Post newspaper in New York City. Rupert Murdoch, who has just offered a $4 million advance to the incoming Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, who is, by the way, in the process of considering whether or not foreign ownership of American and television and radio stations ought to be allowed.
They want to lift all the restrictions on it, the Republicans.
I know that. But my dad, who had his union busted, is sitting home with cancer. He can't get a job. He works part-time in a liquor store. This is a man with 43 years of experience, much of it managerial at a newspaper. Tax cuts don't do him any good. He can't pay for his health insurance, and not only can he not pay for his health insurance, he can't pay the bills. You can cut taxes all you like. These are the people. This is a working person who will not benefit. And the president doesn't understand that there's a lot of people out there like my father. And that is what the American people need, is someone who can articulate this kind of thing. And the president doesn't do it.
That's just not true. Nobody's done more to make sure that people understand the kinds of opportunities we have to provide than President Clinton. And if you look at the kinds of programs he's talked about, whether it's preserving Medicare, preserving disability programs, preserving the unemployment system, making sure that people have adequate job training. I feel your dad is in a tough situation, and it's a horrible situation.
You think he's the only one? You think he's a small minority?
I don't think he's the small minority.
Tax cuts don't do people like my father any good.
And tax cuts aren't the only answer, but they're part of the answer.
George, I hate to interrupt, but I have to take a break here. If you can stay, great. If you got to go, I understand, and I thank you for calling in. Stay tuned. We will continue.
This is the...
Seven minutes before the hour, the Tom Leykis Show. George Stephanopoulos is still with us on the phone. Thanks for hanging in there, George.
It's okay.
Was there something else you wanted to say? Because I want to give you the last word here.
No, go for it. Ask a question.
What was my question? Did I have a question?
I don't know.
I don't think I had a question. I just think I made a point. And the point was that for people who are really in the hole, for people like my dad is a victim of technology. His job has pretty much been computerized. And he's at an age where job retraining is difficult. It's difficult to find a new job. You know, there are a lot of guys like him. Guys who worked on factory assembly lines. Guys who worked at a newspaper where at one time they took a ruler and a number 1 lead or number 3 lead pencil, number 1 lead pencil, I guess. I never did this for a living. And they drew out the layout of the newspaper. And now you can do it on a computer in half an hour instead of taking a whole workday to do it. There are all kinds of people in this position. And tax cuts sound great. They sound awfully Republican to me. But the real truth is that for somebody who doesn't make a living, a tax cut doesn't do them any good. Well, we're not talking middle class anymore. We're talking lower middle class or less.
That's definitely true, but that's not all the president's doing. And I think you know that.
Really?
And absolutely. If you look at what the president's done, if you look at the training programs he's put in place, and you're probably right, for your dad at his age, it's a lot tougher. And we just have to make sure we have a strong safety net in the country for people who have disabilities, for people who have illnesses, for people who can't get another job, to make sure that they still are taken care of. And under the president's budget, that all happens. I'll tell you one thing, under the contract with America that the Republicans are pushing, that safety net is gone. It is long gone. And you've got the president in there fighting for it. Everything is a matter of choices. Everything is a matter of alternatives. But you can't reduce the president's entire program to tax cuts.
I'm real short on time, George. I'm going to ask you one final question real quickly now. $25 billion in new defense spending. How is that going to help the middle class?
We need a strong America. We need to make sure that our military forces are ready and secure. And
didn't the president just cut defense spending in the last 2 years?
The defense spending has been going down, as you know, ever since the Berlin Wall came down, ever since the end of the Cold War.
And now it's going back up. I'm out of time, George, but I really appreciate you being with us, and I really appreciate you taking the time, but we're out of time. Thank you.
You're listening to the Tom Leykis Show. Alka-Seltzer.
Before the hour, the Tom Leykis Show. The mic was not on there. I can't hide it. Stay tuned. The Tom Leykis Show.
The Tom Leykis Show.
I didn't have a lot of time there. Not a lot of room to be creative. What can I say? It's the Tom Leykis Show, coast to coast from Los Angeles. Still to come, comedian Kevin Meaney will be joining us later in the broadcast. And we'll talk some more about the differences between Democrats and Republicans. We'll be getting to your telephone calls, because I think there's a lot more people like my dad than the president knows, or than George Stephanopoulos knows. I'll tell you more about my family and all of that coming up on the Tom Leykis Show.
All right, you try to keep coming up with these hour after hour after hour. You're listening to 710 Talk KMPC, Los Angeles. Here's the latest from ABC News. I'm Bob Hart. The Major League Baseball players have made what they call a major concession.